today's video, we're going to be using a paired samples t-test in SPSS. So the research question we're going to examine is here. Is there a difference between the actual high temperature and the 5-day predicted high temperature? We will be using the weather.sav data file, which is from our course's discussion board SPSS files zip file. So we've crafted the null hypothesis in this case as the mean actual high temperature is equal to the mean 5-day predicted high temperature, and the alternative is that the mean actual high temperature is not equal to the mean 5-day predicted high temperature. Note that in this case the data are paired. They're paired because when you look in the data set in SPSS, you have the dates over here. Here's the actual high temperature, and over here is the predicted 5-day high temperature. So it's the date that's really kind of pairing these two numbers together for each of these different entries in our SPSS data set. So in order to complete our paired samples t-test, we're going to go up, once we have the data set loaded into SPSS, we'll go up to the Analyze menu, we'll go to Compare Means, and we'll select the paired samples t-test. Now in here we need to put in the two different variables that are going to be paired together. So we'll drag the actual high temperature over into variable number 1, and we'll drag the 5-day predicted high temperature over into variable number 2. I always like to look at these options, just make sure that everything is what I want on here. We'll keep the confidence interval percentage at 95%. So then we'll just click OK. And up comes our results in our output window of SPSS. Here we have some descriptive statistics, the mean, the n, the standard deviation, and the standard error mean. You have the correlation between those two variables. And what we really want down here at the bottom is the paired samples test. So here we have mean, standard deviation, standard error mean again, and the numbers we want are right over here at the end. A t-value of minus 0.757, we have 34 degrees of freedom, and we have this sig two-tailed 0.454. So we can actually tell right away that at the 5% alpha, our sig two-tailed is 0.454, which is very much larger than our alpha value of 0.05. So we are going to be rejecting the we're not going to be able to reject the null hypothesis in this case. This is not below the 0.05 threshold for us to be able to reject the null. But we're going to take this one step further, and we'll look up our t-value and our degrees of freedom. We'll compare our t-value to the t-value that we would need to find in order to reject the null using one of our online calculators. So this is the online calculator that's found at easycalculation.com, and you can, from your SPSS window, put in your degrees of freedom 34. We do have a two-tailed because we set this up as equals and not equals, so I'll set my two-tailed alpha to be 0.05, and I'll do a calculation. And what this says is that the two-tailed t-value would be 2.0322. Well, because it's two-tailed, that would be a plus or minus 2.0322, and you would need a t-value bigger than that on the positive side or smaller than that on the negative side. So our t-value cut off 2.0322, and if we look back at our SPSS window, we see that our t-value was minus 0.757. So that's not less than -2, and it's not greater than the positive 2 values that we needed from the calculator. It's in between those two cutoff scores, and therefore it's in the fail to reject region. So in this particular case, we can summarize our results back in our Word document with something like this. So since our sig two-tailed value is, and let me go back and see what the number was again, 0.454, and this is not less than, so it's greater than 0.05, we fail to reject the null, and we cannot accept the alternative hypothesis. Or we could also rewrite this as, since our t-value Since our t-value of minus 0.757 is in between, is not larger than the cutoff, score of 2.03 we are in the fail to reject region, and again we cannot reject the null hypothesis. So if I want to put one final kind of comment into my conclusion about this, is that we have determined that there really is not a significant difference in the means of the actual high temperature and the means of the predicted 5-day high temperature. Okay, so I hope that you see that most of the time spent on this video was just watching me type. The actual test itself is very simple. Once you have the null and the alternative set up in the proper way, you have your paired data and you have your data already plugged into SPSS. We really only have a couple of different kinds of mouse clicks that gets us to this output document. And from this output document, what you can see in these last 3 columns are the numbers that help you determine whether you reject the null or fail to reject the null. And it's really based upon either this number, the sig two-tailed, in the case of a two-tailed test, or you can use an online calculator to compare your t-value with the degrees of freedom to the cutoff t-value that you can get, again, from that online calculator. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and we'll see you next time.